If I understand the situation correctly, researchers tended to view men as the norm or the standard, and to ignore, downplay, or underreport sex differences. This is a statement made by Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her speech to the Women's Health Research Center during their annual awards banquet. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born on March 15, 1933. She had a career as a lawyer and a jurist. She was a Supreme Court Justice from 1993 to 2020, when she died at age 87, and she fought against gender discrimination throughout her life, which makes her a very qualified person to give this speech. This speech was given at the Society for Women's Health Research annual awards banquet in Washington, D.C. in the year of 2001. The importance of this speech was to inspire hope for women, especially those who were battling cancer, as RBG herself was battling colorectal cancer at the time. The audience present were members of the society, which included both women and men. Some current events that inspired her speech were the lack of women's health research and some uncertainty in her cancer treatment, because the differences between women and men medically were not documented well enough at the time that she began her journey with cancer, and so she had to make a lot of tough decisions. And this speech was to kind of give help to those who are experiencing the same thing she is.
When I first learned of the Society for Women's Health Research and its effort to put women on the map of medical studies, I was reminded of a conversation I overheard at a meeting of the Association of American Law Schools in the early 1970s. A group of leading law teachers were speculating about the changes that might occur with women beginning to enter law school in numbers and not just as a few at a time curiosities. After an initial expression of uncertainty, which was certainly not characteristic of brothers-in-law, one prominent law professor said, "Not to worry. What were women lawyers after all? Only soft men." That was the prevailing view in the medical profession too. If I understand the situation correctly,
Ruth Bader Ginsburg uses ethos, pathos, and logos in her speech in the following ways. She uses ethos to build trust and show her knowledge and credentials. She, as a woman, was experiencing these things she spoke about, and especially with her experience with colorectal cancer and her encouragement of people to get tested for it. She was a Supreme Court Justice, and that showed to everyone that she is trustworthy and very smart and very well qualified. She used pathos and her imagery to invoke emotion in her audience. With the quote, "I have been asked to say just a few words to you about my bout with colorectal cancer, which began in the summer of 1999. It is the first time I have talked in public about something so personal." She shares this with the audience just to kind of bring them into her mind and to relate to them, try and invoke their emotions to her experience with this disease and her condition. She uses logic, reasoning, and data in her speech in the following ways with this quote. "Also, If anyone here had such an examination years ago and found it particularly unpleasant, as I did when I had a first colonoscopy in the 1980s, I can assure you it is less awful as currently administered. She uses her past experience with having a colonoscopy and her present experience to encourage people to get tested as they age. And she uses the next quote, "Medical science has made enormous progress since my husband had cancer in 1958. She shares her husband's experience with cancer as well to kind of provide her reasoning for encouraging people to be aware of their health. Some rhetorical devices that Ruth uses during her speech are antithesis, distinction, and metaphor. For antithesis, two contrasting ideas within the same sentence, she uses the quote, "The concerting efforts of the society are hastening the day when women will be studied equally and as women, not neglected or written off as soft men." She uses a positive statement on the front end and a negative one on the back end to contrast the two ideas and draw attention to the ways that research has been done in the past. With the distinction, she says, "The surgery and what I call post-operative insurance course, chemotherapy and radiation, are not easy to bear physically and can generate large anxiety." She uses the interrupter, chemotherapy and radiation, to provide some clarity and elaborate to avoid confusion. And she quotes the following metaphor in this quote, "After initial expressions of uncertainty not characteristic of brothers-in-law, one prominent professor said, 'Not to worry, what were women lawyers after all? Only soft men.'" This was a way that the professor compared women to men, and she wanted to express that further. The past and present relevance of this speech are, in the past, there's been a lack of women's health research being done and gender discrimination in the workplace and medical treatment that Ruth faced often. And in the present, the amount of research is improving and more progress can always be made. Gender equality has not been put to an end and doesn't seem to be coming soon. So that will stay relevant in the years to come. And I will leave you with another quote by RBG. "Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time." Thank you for listening.